How's
everybody doing
everybody
today?
doing
My name
today?
is
My name
Kevin
is Kevin
Grant.
Grant.
I'm
I'm
actually going
actually
to be
going to be
joining a
joining a
discussion
discussion
on
on
whether or
whether or
not the
not the
world
world
is a
is a
clash of
clash of
civilizations.
civilizations,
And
and
I'm
I'm
actually
actually
taking the
taking the
stance that
stance
it's
that
not
it's
a
not a
clash of
clash of
civilizations.
civilizations.
I am
I
going
am going
to
to
kind of lay
kind of
out
lay
some of
out
my
some of my
theology
theology
behind that,
behind that,
and
and
also the
also the
scholar who
scholar who
brought
brought
that
that
to the
to the
forefront around
forefront around
1993. I'm
1993.
going
I'm
to
going to
kind
go
of go
into
into
a little bit
a
of
little bit
what
of what
he
he
had to
had to
say, and
say.
hopefully we
Hopefully, we
can
can
kind of
kind
go
of go
through and
through and
have a good
have a
time
good
with
time
this,
with this,
and most
and most
importantly,
importantly,
hopefully
hopefully
everybody's safe
everybody's
right
safe
now.
right now.
And if
And if
not,
not,
uh, I'm going to keep
I'm
in
going to
my
keep in my
prayers and
prayers
many
and many
blessings from
blessings
God.
from God.
Let's have a
Let's
great
have a great
time,
time,
and let's
and
get
let's
into
get into
this.
this.
All right, everybody. Like I said, we're going to kind of get into this a little bit, and I'm going to try to lay out my case why I don't believe that the world is a clash of civilizations. And there's a lot to get into. There's a lot to get into here. I think that I think there's a lot of things kind of being construed and misinterpreted, and I think that maybe we need some clarification as to what we're actually talking about, right? So I think first and foremost, it's important to understand what a civilization is, to kind of go forward, right? And I went to ancient.eu/civilizations. Guy named Christian uh, Violetti. I think I said that right. I'm not sure, but I went to that website to kind of because I felt like this had a very good overview of what a civilization was. Basically, commonly used, it's a society with high levels of culture, technology, and development. Also, Christian also kind of lays out why that definition doesn't always cover all the societies that it needs to, all the civilizations, because you have nomadic civilizations, you have civilizations that kind of go primarily by oral, by oral transfer of history, math, science, those kind of things. So, that definition doesn't always fit into what we think of a society or a civilization is today. Um, Another thing is when it comes on to civilizations, a lot of people confuse what a civilization is and a nation state, right? For example, you hear a lot about the Egyptian civilization or the Chinese civilization or the Greco-Roman civilization, but are those civilizations or nation states? That's a debate that we can have. But, I think that it's a little bit of both. And, I'm kind of getting into why I think that. But, um, yeah, that's basically the definition of a civilization is we're going to go with a high level, any society that has a high level of cultural and technological development. So we're looking for different things. We're going to get into what the markers of civilization are. I went to the National Geographic for this one. All civilizations have certain characteristics. These include number one, large population centers, right? So large groups of people in a concentrated area. Two, monumental architecture and unique art style. So if you're thinking about, let's say, like the Moors in Spain, even to this day, if you go to Spain, you will see the Islamic architecture, and that right there is a marker of their civilization. You know that they were in that area just by their architecture and how that basically amalgamated itself into Spanish culture as well. Um, Three, shared communication strategies. So basically language. Four, system of administrating territories. So political, structure and everything. And complex division of labor, and the division of people into social and economic classes. So yeah, that's the basic definition or markers of civilization. We're gonna keep it moving here. Um, who is Samuel P. Huntington? This is very important to our discussion because this is kind of who we are basing our whole discussion off of, right? So basically, Samuel P. Huntington is a very prominent American politician, political scientist. Excuse me, not politician, political scientist. Um, he worked for multiple U.S. government agencies, and he's one of the leading people when it comes to national foreign policy in the late 20th century, 21st century. Um, he graduated from Yale. He attended University of Chicago, excuse me, where he got a master's degree, and he also attended Harvard University, where he earned his doctorate. So, I mean, some of the most prestigious universities in this land, right? So that's basically the overview of who Samuel P. Huntington is. All right, so now we're going to get into why we're talking about Samuel P. Huntington. He wrote a book called "This Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order." That's 1996, right? That conflict between several large world civilizations, or what he classified as civilizations, was replacing conflict. Was replacing conflict between states or ideologies as the dominant cleavage in international relations. So basically, um, after I'm going to kind of get into this, but after a certain point, he believed that things kind of relied, and now we're going to be dealing with going forward these different civilizations. Um, Themes that the book emphasizes examines how the nation states are going to align themselves post Cold War. So, like after the Berlin Wall fell, how are we going to align ourselves? And he believed that people are going to align themselves more along cultural lines and religious lines than, let's say, the politics or military or even the economics, right? So, it's a very constructionist way of thinking. I think constructionists, they would kind of a little bit agree on that side of it. I guess Professor, he's gonna kind of dissect that, but I think that that's kind of how they think as well. So I would go with him aligning himself with that a little bit. Now I think that he's also a realist as well. I think that he has a lot of realism in what he does. Um, he separated the world into nine civilizations, and we're gonna get over here. I'm gonna disappear over here real quick so you can see the whole map. So basically, the nine civilizations that he divided this whole thing up to into is Western, Orthodox, Islamic, Buddhist, Hindu, African, Latin America, Cynic, and Japanese. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I have a lot of problems with this map. I think this map is very, very poorly colored in, right? Um, I think that he's not recognizing first and foremost the the role of um, Islamification versus actually adopting or becoming a Islamic civilization. I think those two things are very, very different. Um, Also, I'm going to be coming from it from a very Afrocentric point of view. If you don't like that, hey, we go by Eurocentric point of view like pretty much all the time. So I think that it's fair that we can come from it from an Afrocentric point of view. Um, I think that these lines are very poorly drawn out, but if we're gonna go with his theology, right? If we're gonna go with how he's drawing them out, it's very clear that he thinks of the world more in racial terms and more religious terms than he would like to kind of than what he would like to kind of go about, right? And I think that that has a lot to do with the way he drew out this map. I think that if you put true serum in him, I think that he would say that the clash of civilizations have more to do with race than it does, whatever things that you have here. Um, Australia being part, like there's a lot I'm gonna get into, but I think that that basically, and one of the biggest things that I believe is that these are not civilizations. These are Euro-Asian theologies that are trying to jostle to be on top of whatever Euro-Asian, you know, um, worldview or uh, power structure that is going to persist for the next 100 years. So we're going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to reappear here. Um, I think that these are the Euro-Asian theologies, governmental structures that are trying to jostle for position. You have socialism over there. That's Karl Marx. We kind of read about him for a little bit, so I'm not going to get too far into that. But we all know that socialism is a huge topic right now. It's a huge topic right now, and but it's a Eurocentric, democratic socialism, whatever you want to call it. So how socialism is applied right now is a very Eurocentric version of socialism. So that's a Euro-Asian philosophy. Democratic capitalism, again, another Western philosophy, Euro-Asian philosophy, um, that's applied. And then now Islamic rule. Now, Islamic rule is not the same thing as the actual religion of Islam or Muslim or whatever the case may be. This is more so the structure of Islam, right? The structure of Islam, the way that they govern. That's what this is talking about. I think that these are the categories that the world is kind of divvied up in. Again, these are not civilizations, though, right? These are not civilizations. I believe that what we have is a situation where, and he's going to detail it. I'm going to play a clip where he talks about how Europe basically destroyed most of the other civilizations, conquered most of the other civilizations to modernize them, right? So I'm going to play that clip in a little bit. You can judge for yourself. Um, so he kind of detailed that himself. So um, and I actually have a book right here. It is, if you'll see the title, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. I'm actually rereading it, trying to get some points from it. And he kind of details how the West was won, basically, and how why black people, people of African descent, are in the situation that we're in right now. So I think that that's that. And yeah, I think that this is more so a elimination of the competition, and now we're trying to jostle to see which flag we want to put up as a flag post. That's basically what I see right here, and that's why I see what we have right here. I'm gonna play this clip. This is talking about um, Americanization, and I think that it's important to understand the difference between Islamification, like I said, and um, actually having an Islamic society and civilization versus something else, right? So let's go ahead and play this clip.
Yet there is a popular perception in some senses that with the globalization of the media, and let's shall we say the Americanization of the media, that in some senses that global civilizations and cultures are becoming more homogeneous. So you have, the Chinese civilization is more American in some ways, perhaps,
Yes.
than it was before.
Well, there certainly are those aspects of globalization taking place as a result of the tremendous increase in transportation communications. And obviously, a lot of this involves Americanization because of the extent to which the United States corporations and other entities dominate these facilities for communication and transportation. And obviously, American popular culture is tremendously popular around the world in the movies and consumer goods and Coca-Cola, McDonald's, etc. But in many respects, it seems to me that much of this is relatively superficial, and people can adapt the global American culture, but underneath they still, with the other half of their lives, they still maintain their traditional practices, beliefs, ways of life.
So you see there basically him detailing the difference between a society becoming Americanized and a society being a part of Western civilization, which obviously are two completely different things, right? So I think that it's important to kind of understand why those two things are very, very different. Because just because a society is Americanized does not mean that it's an American civilization or it's a Western civilization, right? Now he understands this completely, so he's a very smart dude. I remember I detailed him. Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Chicago University. Very smart dude, right? He understands this concept, a very simple concept, but he fails when you look at the map. If you go back to that map, he fails to kind of recognize the Islamification part of it and the fact that um, a lot of these nation states in Africa, while they do have Islam, and Islam is a religion that they practice, they have their own traditions that are completely separate from any Arab country. They don't see to eye. And in fact, um, the Arab world and the African world have a long, terrible history together, right? And I'm kind of going to touch on it a little bit, but it has a very long, terrible history together, and they're not the same thing, right? So I'm kind of go to the next slide.
Yet there is a
Sorry about that. Um, Again, what I was detailing, Arab and African Islamic states are not the same, right? You see the pictures over here. These pictures are kind of, detailing the Indian Ocean African slave trade. Um, Arabs actually, the Euro-Asians, whatever you want to call them, were actually um, buying and selling Africans long before Europe was. But for whatever reason, they don't really get the kind of smoke, if you will, that Europe gets when it comes on to slavery. Um, the Arabs do not consider Africans the same as them, right? And to say that these states in Africa are the same as the Arab countries, if you're going to make that claim, why don't you make the claim? And if you go back to the map, I'm going to go back to the map in a little bit. A lot of the West African countries speak English or French, right? A lot of them are very Christian. A lot of them are very Westernized, Americanized, right? If you're going to make a claim that and again, I don't agree with this whole map, right? But if you're going to make that claim that these countries are a part of the Islamic civilization, why don't you put the Western countries, the Western African countries, in Western civilization? Because they have a lot of markers. Again, me personally, I wouldn't put them in Western civilization, me personally. But if we're going by your rules, if we're going by your map and what you believe Western civilization is, and you're going to put all these countries in Islamic civilization, right? Why don't you put the Western African countries in Western civilization? Why? Because honestly, I believe that he believes that it's more of a racial thing. I'm going to get into that in a second.
basis with the core states of civilizations, countries like the United States, Russia, China, Japan, India, others, playing a leading role in maintaining peace within their area, and then negotiating with the core states of other civilizations to try to prevent or end conflicts between groups from the different civilizations. I think Western culture is quite unique, and one can trace the emergence of the central elements of Western culture and civilization back 1,000 years. And they have made the West quite different from most other civilizations in terms of concepts of the rule of law, separation of church and state, rights of the individuals, the pluralistic nature of Western society historically is quite unique, and that makes Western culture very different. And I think it is the reason why 500 years or so ago, the West took the initiative in modernizing the world and in conquering a good part of the world.
Okay, so you heard your boy, right? You heard him. That's him. That's your boy Huntington. Okay. You heard he said that the West took an initiative to modernize the world 500 years ago. What was going on 500 years ago? I think we all know the answer to that, right? I think that a man, um, he believes he looked, or used to, I believe I should say, looks at the world in a very racial mind frame, right? Um, Professor said that he doesn't believe he's racist. I don't know. I don't know this dude. I'm just going off of what I'm seeing right here. Um, I think that he um, he honestly believes that Western civilization should take a larger role in the world, and I believe that he looks at Islam as a very um, threatening and bad thing um, for the West. And in that way, I think an investment of Islam is not good, right? And in that way, I think that he has a very neo-realist viewpoint, in my opinion. It's a combination of constructionist and neo-realism, a little bit. And I think he combines the two. Apparently, he also believes that immigration should be limited in Western civilization. Um, he believes that people assimilating themselves is a problem in Western civilization, that not enough effort is made by people to assimilate themselves. So it's a whole bunch of stuff there. So, I mean, I'm going to let you kind of, decide for yourself. But in my opinion, this right here kind of shows how he thinks and why he thinks what he thinks. So we're going to keep moving. Um, we're going to go back to this map real quick because the problems that I have, there's so many problems, and now that I played some of those clips, you kind of understand some of the problems that I have with it. You know, First and foremost, you look at Africa again. I'm going to go from a Afrocentric point of view. Um, you have Africa, right, or African civilization. I already detailed why I think it's bold that if you're going to do it like this, why don't you include um, the West African states that are Christian into Western civilization if you're going to do it like this? Reason why I say that is because I mean you look at Western the countries that he put in Western civilization. I mean Australia. I'm going to detail that in a second. I also have a problem with the fact that apparently he said that Haiti and the Caribbean is an entity unto itself, and Haiti is an entity unto itself. Why isn't, if you're gonna have an African civilization, and if you notice, right? Like I'm gonna, you know, get my little pointer here. This is America and this is Canada, right? All the way across the world, we have this right here, right? Why do we have this, right? Because, you know, there's a decent amount of white people here, the whole 9 yards. Now, let's circle this right here. South Africa, right? Why isn't South Africa a part of Western civilization then, right? I'm pretty sure somewhere up there, the Dutch, they're somewhere up here, right? The Dutch, they're part of Western civilization. That's kind of the same thing what we're talking about, right? I just don't understand why, um, you know, you're gonna draw the lines. Well, I do. I think I understand why he drew the lines like that. Like I said, he's looking at life in a very racial point of view. Um, Now, again, if you want to also talk about Africa and African civilization, I don't see how you can look at the Caribbean, especially the Afro Caribbeans, and say that they're not a part of African civilization. Literally, Marcus Garvey was called a Pan Africanist. He's both of my parents are Jamaican. He was a revolutionary thinker from Jamaica. He was the leader of the Pan African movement, and the Pan African theology still persists to this day, right? Um, Haiti, and if you look at the national heroes, literally the national heroes of um, of Jamaica, of Haiti, Barbados, Trinidad, they are all noted um, African um, African slaves, right? The Maroons, if you look into the Maroons, they are very rich African heritage people, right? Um, when you look at reggae, reggae is a African art form. When you look at Rastafarianism, which is prevalent in the Caribbeans, a religion that's prevalent in the Caribbeans, Afrocentric, right? But yet still he separates um, the those African states, in my opinion. Oh, and I forgot, Haiti actually tried to at one point become a part of Africa, of the African Union, right? But he doesn't put Haiti with Africa, but he puts Australia with Western civilization. It's just a whole kind of mess to me, right? Now, here's the thing, right? I kind of detail this, so I'm not gonna go too deep into this, but and I'm gonna come back up here. Um, African nations are not part of the West slash Orthodox, right? And what I mean by that is I'm gonna go back over here. Actually, I'm not gonna go back. X. Um, if you look at the map, one of the major civilizations that he supposedly says exist is the Orthodox civilization, right? And this is again why I think that he views the world more on a racial like paradigm than a civilization paradigm, right? Um, if you know anything about Ethiopia, you know one of the biggest things, one of the biggest pride points that they have is their Ethiopian Turos Orthodox Church, right? I think that anybody that's looked at African civilization, they know how important that is in the more modern times. Now, Ethiopia wasn't always a Christian state, but it was one of the first Christian states in the world, right? It has some of the oldest churches in the world. In fact, people believe, and the Ethiopians believe, that the Ark of the Covenant is actually in Ethiopia, right? So what you see here is like I'm gonna have my pointer. Um, you see here, right? Um, he believes that Russia is the leading thing in the Orthodoxy. Now, if you go by what he's saying, that it's not about the lines of the states, it's about the culture and it's about the religion. Well, this picture is showing um, Russian Orthodox priests with the priests from Ethiopia. In fact, if you talk to Ethiopians, if you talk to people from Greece, they will tell you that it's not uncommon. They'll walk into church and see a priest from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church leading the congregation, and vice versa. Ethiopian might walk into their church and see somebody from Greece leading their congregation. They have a very good synergy. In fact, at one point there was a very large um, Greek civilization in Ethiopia, right? And they lived um, alongside the Ethiopians, right? So, like, when you're talking about a civilization and markers of a civilization and things like that, and you're going by cultural phenomenon, I don't see how you can leave out Ethiopia from your Orthodox civilization, right? Again, racial lines. That picture over here, this big church right here looks like a mega church, right? Where is this? Is this in Texas somewhere? Is this Joel Osteen? No, this is actually in Ghana, right? Ghana is actually one of the biggest Christian states in the world. A lot of the Western African countries are largely Christian, and some are Islamic, some are Christian. And but again, these are not. I don't believe that Christianity and Islam are markers of civilization, are the only markers of civilization, right? I think that Africans have our own civilization independent of Islam or Christianity or anything else. And I'm a Christian myself, right? I just want to lay that out there. And so I'm not banging on Christianity, I'm not banging on Islam. I'm just saying that Africans have a very separate, it's a separate thing, right? Africans do their own thing, it's completely separate, in my opinion, from those things. But if we're going by his rules, right, why isn't a place like Ghana a part of Western civilization and a place like Australia is? I don't get why Australia is a part of Western civilization and Ghana is not, right? Australia has a very large indigenous population. In fact, it has a very large African population. It has a lot of African blood right there. It makes sense, it's right there, right? Um, has a lot of untouched tribes, the whole 9 yards. Now, it does have a good amount of white people in it. So I think that's why he put Australia there, right? But I'm going to go to this next slide right here. This is detailing the percentage of Christians in Australia versus the number of Christians in in um in Ghana. As you can see, it's 71.2 to 52.1. So again, if you're gonna do it by religion and culture and stuff like that, I think that you're doing it by religion, by you know racial racial lines. That's what I think it is more than anything else, which I'm not too mad at. I won't be too mad at it. Just be real. Just keep it 100. But I don't think that it's a clash of civilizations because um, the Europeans, and he detailed it over there, where he said, "Oh, they modernized everything 500 years ago." The Europeans eliminated the competition a long time ago. Now it's just jostling for position in the Euro-Asian world, right? There's no competing civilization with the Euro-Asian civilization, right? Islam, capitalism, socialism, Christianity, whatever the case may be, those are the main things. That's what's going on. And that's pretty much all I got. That's the map